Adanna Okorie was used to elegance, the glass mansion in Maitama, the black G-Wagon, the private dinners where her husband, Chike, spoke about millions with arrogant calm. But one morning, her illusion shattered. At the cashier's counter in a luxury boutique, her platinum card was declined. Not once, but twice. The murmurs around her cut deep, Abuja socialites whispering, "Isn't that Chike Okorie's wife?" Her hands trembled as she called a bank, only to hear the words that froze her blood. "Madam, your account has been restricted by your husband's authorization." Hours later, she stormed into their glass office tower in the central business district, demanding an explanation. Chike looked up from his mahogany desk, face cold as marble. "You've been spending recklessly, Adanna," he said. "It's time you learned discipline." She stared at him. This man she'd supported from nothing, who once couldn't afford rent when she used her NYSE savings to pay his first office lease. Now, he was teaching her discipline. Humiliation washed over her. That night, she tried to talk, but he dismissed her again, calling her ungrateful and spoiled. When she reminded him of her sacrifices, he laughed, a dark, mocking laugh. "Everything you have is because of me. Without me, you're nothing." Those words didn't break her. They ignited something terrifying inside her. For 2 weeks, Adanna watched him move like a king in his empire. Meetings, photo ops, charity events. Meanwhile, she couldn't withdraw 5,000 Nigerian nairas. Even her phone allowance was cut off. When she tried to use her car, she discovered the driver had been reassigned to company use. It was psychological warfare. Chike wanted her to beg. Instead, Adanna went silent. She contacted her old university friend Ngozi, now a sharp corporate lawyer. They met at a quiet cafe in Gwarinpa. Ngozi's words gave her a flicker of hope. "He may control the accounts, but not your ideas. You have a brain. Adanna, let's build something of your own." Adanna had once dreamed of starting a real estate staging and property management firm. She designed most of Chike's show apartments years ago. Ngozi suggested reviving that dream, legally separate from Chike. But Adanna hesitated. "He'll destroy me if he finds out." Ngozi smirked. "Then don't let him find out until it's too late." That night, while Chike slept beside her, Adanna drafted her business plan by candlelight. The same woman he called Nothing now sketching the blueprint of his downfall. Adanna secretly registered a business name, A&O Interiors and Staging Limited. Using Ngozi's firm as a proxy, she leased a small office in Wuse too. To fund her idea, she began selling her jewelry, not the cheap pieces, but the diamond earrings Chike gave her on their anniversary. It was painful but liberating. Ngozi introduced her to Zeno Daniels, a young architect and tech-savvy designer known for transforming failing real estate projects. He listened to her pitch quietly, then said, "You have vision. You just need structure and capital." With his guidance, she began rebranding old apartments for mid-tier buyers, targeting the market Chike's company ignored. Her first job came from a widow who wanted to rent out her house in Gaki. Adanna transformed it beautifully using affordable materials. When the house sold in 2 weeks, word spread fast. Suddenly, small developers began calling. Within 3 months, A&O Interiors had become the go-to firm for modern, minimalist staging in Abuja. Meanwhile, Chike noticed an odd trend. Smaller developers were attracting buyers faster than his own premium listings. "What's their secret?" he asked his board. Tai, his partner, shrugged. "Some small design firm. A&O Interiors." Chike laughed dismissively. Never heard of them. He had, but he was about to. Months later, A&O Interiors landed a massive project, redesigning the interior of a new housing estate in Jabi. The developer, one of Chike's biggest rivals, Chief Okonkwo's son, Keen. When Adanna arrived at construction site, hard hat on, clipboard in hand, workers stopped to stare. The woman who once lived in luxury now commanded with confidence and skill. Zeno noticed a transformation from timid wife to fierce visionary. Their partnership deepened into friendship, though gossip soon started flying. Chike's wife is working with another man. One evening, Chike attended a real estate gala. The whole buzz with applause for the innovative design team behind Jobby Heights, A&O Interiors. When Adanna walked on stage to receive the award, Chike's face turned white. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said into the MIC, "this is proof that women don't need permission to shine." The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. Social media exploded that night. Chike Okorie, from housewife to powerhouse. Back home, Chike's fury was volcanic. "You embarrassed me before Abuja's elite." "No, Chike," she said, standing tall. "You embarrassed yourself when you tried to bury me alive." That night, he threw her out of the mansion. But instead of tears, Adanna smiled through the pain. She'd already rented her own apartment in Jai, and she wasn't done yet. Now independent, Adanna poured her energy into expansion. A&O Interiors became a viral success story, featured in magazines, trending on Instagram. Her office buzzed with young designers she trained personally. Zeno suggested tech integration, a property app to connect landlords, tenants, and design experts. Adanna hesitated, but he convinced her. "Let's call it Haven Hub. Your name will open doors." They launched the app quietly. Within weeks, it gained traction. Even Chike's company unknowingly listed some properties there through agents. Meanwhile, Chike's empire began to wobble. His partner Ty secretly funneled funds out of joint accounts, and their biggest project stalled due to permit issues. Investors grew nervous. Chief Okonkwo summoned Chike. "You've grown arrogant. You ignored the same woman who built your brand. Look at her now." Chike's pride wouldn't let him admit it, but he couldn't sleep that night. Every headline screamed his humiliation. In Jai, Adanna watched the same news, her ex-husband's empire faltering, and whispered, "You said I was nothing, but I'm about to show you what nothing can become." Chike Okorie had built his empire on pride, fear, and absolute control. But lately, the cracks were showing. His office, once buzzing with power, now felt tense and brittle. Staff whispered, investors demanded answers, and even his longtime partner, Ty Musa, seemed distant. At first, Chike thought it was a phase. But when his CFO reported missing funds from a major project account, he exploded. "Who dares touch my money?" The truth hit harder than any betrayal. Ty had diverted 250 million Nigerian nairas through shell contracts, all to cover his own collapsing investments in Port Harcourt. Chike confronted him in the boardroom. "You stole from me." "You built this empire like a prison," Ty sneered. "Everyone's tired of your tyranny. Even your wife escaped." Those words burned. Chike lunged at him, but security intervened. By evening, Ty resigned and leaked confidential reports to the press, painting Chike as a dictator whose company was rotting from the inside. The scandal spread fast. Online blogs feasted on it, but what hurt most was a headline. A&O Interiors overtakes Okorie Holdings as Abuja's fastest-growing property brand. Meanwhile, Adanna was in her Jai office, signing up designs for a new client, the same bank that had once frozen her card on Chike's order. Life had come full circle. Zeno walked in with fresh analytics. Haven Hub just hit 50,000 active users. We're trending in Abuja. Adanna smiled softly. "Let's scale it. I want this app in Lagos, Port Harcourt, everywhere his shadow once blocked me." That night, as Chike drank alone in his mansion, his phone buzzed with an alert. A&O Interiors featured on CNN Africa, from housewife to housing revolutionist. For the first time, he realized she wasn't fighting for revenge. She was building a legacy, and that terrified him more than anything. Success drew attention, and enemies. Adanna was invited to the Abuja Women in Business Summit, where she gave a keynote titled "Turning Pain into Power." Her story moved the audience to tears and applause. But among the guests sat a familiar face, Chief Okonkwo, Chike's old mentor. After her speech, he approached her privately. "Adanna, your growth reminded me when I started my first firm. But be careful, success breeds wolves." He hinted that Chike was plotting a corporate comeback, preparing to sabotage her projects by pulling political strings. Adanna wasn't surprised. "Let him try," she said. "I built this from the ground. I'm not afraid of mud." But soon, her contract began facing delays. Building permits stalled. Suppliers pulled out last minute, and rumors spread that her designs were copied. Zeno traced it all back to one source, Okorie Holdings' PI unit. She refused to respond publicly. Instead, she doubled down on innovation. With Ngoz's legal help, Adanna restructured A&O Interiors under a holding company, Haven Group Limited, shielding it from manipulation. Then, she began recruiting top talents Chike had previously fired, offering them respect and fair pay. Within months, Haven Group became a magnet for creativity. Chike's best engineers, architects, and managers jumped ship. His empire bled talent while Hayes soared. One evening, during a networking gala, Chike confronted her near the bar. "You're stealing my people." "No," she said calmly. "I'm giving them what you never did, dignity." The confrontation went viral on social media the next day. Adanna's poise contrasted sharply with his anger. Public opinion shifted completely. Chike's pride cracked. He began drinking more, pushing away his board, and firing loyal staff. The empire he built to prove his dominance was now collapsing under the weight of his ego and her rise. As Adanna's empire expanded, her connection with Zeno deepened. Their long nights working on Haven Hub often turned into heartfelt conversations about purpose, loss, and destiny. One evening at the rooftop of the Wells Carlton, Zeno surprised her. "Adanna, I've watched you rebuild yourself piece by piece. You inspire me, and I want to be more than your business partner." Adanna froze. The wind carried memories of love turned control, of vows turned to weapons. She looked away. "Zeno, I can't do this again. I'm not ready to love anyone." He smiled gently. "Then let me just stand beside you. No pressure, no promises. Just support." Their friendship continued, pure but charged with emotion. Together, they expanded Haven Hub to Ghana and Kenya. Investors flooded in. But Chike couldn't bear seeing them together. He hired private investigators, feeding tabloids fake affair stories to destroy her credibility. When the news broke, Adanna faced the cameras calmly. "If building with a man who respects my vision makes me guilty, then I accept the charge. But understand, my value isn't defined by gossip." Her composure made her more beloved. Women across Nigeria began calling her the Phoenix of Abuja. Meanwhile, Chike's company faced a government audit triggered by Tai's leaks. Accounts were frozen. Staff protested unpaid salaries. The mighty Okorie Holdings stood on the edge of ruin. In silence, Adanna watched, not with vengeance, but with a quiet, earned peace. The day the EFCC sealed Okorie Holdings headquarters, Abuja trembled. Videos flooded TikTok, men in suits locking the glass doors, workers wailing. The caption read, "From billionaire to bankruptcy, the Okorie empire crumbles." Chike watched from his Range Rover, eyes hollow. He had lost everything: investors, properties, respect. His mentors distanced themselves, and even Chief Okonkwo refused his calls. When he reached home, foreclosure letters waited on the dining table. His mansion was under lien. The vehicles were repossessed. In his despair, he drank until dawn. Alone, forgotten. But life had one last twist. His lawyer revealed that A&O Interiors now owned several of the properties his company had forfeited. In a cruel irony, Adanna's firm had purchased them through auctions. He stormed to her new headquarters, a stunning glass building in Jabi, once his old branch office. She stepped out in an ivory suit, calm as sunrise. "You bought my properties," he shouted. "No," she replied softly. "I bought my freedom, and the dignity you tried to steal." Security escorted him out as staff watched in silence. That night, social media trended with #Adanna owns Okorie, memes, praise, interviews. She became a symbol of resilience, while he became a cautionary tale. Months later, Adanna launched Haven Towers, a luxury apartment complex dedicated to single mothers and widows, affordable, beautiful, empowering. The press called it the future of African real estate. At the grand opening, she stood before cameras. "When I was locked out of my own accounts, I thought my life was over. But sometimes what feels like rejection is just redirection." The crowd erupted. NGOs, banks, and female investors pledged support. Haven Group became a billion-naira brand overnight. Meanwhile, Chike lived in a modest rented apartment, watching her speech on TV. Tears filled his eyes, not just a regret, but realization. He visited her office days later, humbled. "Adanna, I came to say, I'm sorry." She studied him quietly. "You once said I was nothing, but I became everything without you." He nodded, broken. "You did." Instead of bitterness, she extended grace. "Rise, Chike. Let your downfall teach others." They shook hands, not as husband and wife, but as two souls who had completed their lessons. The camera flash caught that moment, and the headline the next day sealed her legacy. The woman who shook an empire, then forgave its king. Power had returned, but with it came pressure. Haven Group had grown into a continental brand, its headquarters gleaming over Jabi Lake. Adanna's calendar was packed: investor meetings, tech panels, housing project from Nairobi to Accra. She had become Africa's Woman of the Year. But success came with noise. Her team expanded. Her face appeared on billboards, and everyone wanted a piece of her. Nights grew longer. Trust grew thinner. Even Zeno, once a confidant, seemed distant, lost between admiration and insecurity. At one board meeting, Zeno proposed a risky merger with a Dubai property tech firm. "We can raise $20 million in valuation overnight," he argued. Adanna frowned. "At the cost of control?" "No, Haven stays African-owned." The disagreement grew public. Board members murmured, and headlines screamed. Tension at Haven Group, founders at war. Meanwhile, Chike, now sober and working as consultant, watched silently from afar. He saw in her eyes what he once saw in himself: exhaustion hidden behind ambition. One night, Adanna sat alone in her penthouse, scrolling through old photos of her humble beginnings. A tear slipped down. "I fought to be free," she whispered. "Now I'm chained to success." The Haven Foundation launch made global news, but within the company, cracks widened. Zeno's resentment grew as investors began calling Adanna the face of Haven. He felt erased. During a late-night meeting, he confronted her. "I helped you build this, Adanna. You were nothing when I met you." The word cut deep, familiar echoes of Chike's cruelty. Adanna's voice trembled, but she stayed calm. "You're wrong, Zeno. You met a woman who was already rebuilding. You just walked beside her." He stormed out, slamming the door. Within weeks, he resigned and leaked confidential data to competitors. News broke out. Haven co-founder accused of insider breach. The scandal hit like a thunderstorm. Stockholders panicked. Adanna's credibility wavered. For the first time since her rise, she felt vulnerable again. But Ngozi stood firm. "This isn't the end. You survived worse." Adanna released a statement, honest, bold, and calm. "I built Haven on resilience. One man's betrayal won't break what thousands of women helped create." Her transparency restored public trust. While Zeno vanished abroad, Adanna tightened her circle and learned a hard truth. Empires aren't shaken by enemies. They're shaken by trusted hands turned cold. Weeks later, Chief Okonkwo invited Adanna to his villa in Asokoro. The once intimidating patriarch now admired her transformation. "You remind me of my late wife," he said, pouring tea. "She fought for women's education when men laughed at her. You're doing the same in real estate." He proposed a mentorship arrangement, combining his influence with her innovation to develop affordable, smart housing estates across Africa. At first, Adanna hesitated. "I promised myself never to depend on powerful men again." Okonkwo chuckled. "Dependence is different from partnership, my daughter." Together, they launched Haven Smart Estates, merging traditional architecture with green technology. It became a sensation, eco-friendly, cost-effective, and designed by women. But not everyone celebrated. Government officials tried to extort her for permits. Competitors sabotaged her suppliers. At one site, thugs vandalized property with graffiti. "You forgot where you came from." Adanna refused to be intimidated. She went live on Instagram that night, standing amid broken glass and paint-splattered walls. "You can break my windows, but not my will. Every wall you tear down, I'll rebuild stronger." The clip went viral. Over 5 million views in 24 hours. #rebuild like Adanna trended across Africa. Meanwhile, Chike watched her speech and smiled faintly. "That's the fire I fell in love with," he muttered. For the first time, admiration replaced bitterness in his heart. Just as Haven reached global prestige, a betrayal came from where she least expected. Family. Her younger brother, Chike, managed a subsidiary of Haven Group. Unknown to her, he had been manipulating financial records to cover his gambling debts. When auditors discovered 120 million Nigerian nairas missing, it hit headlines again. Haven Group faces internal theft. CEO's brother implicated. The scandal shook her emotionally more than financially. She couldn't sleep for days, torn between family loyalty and accountability. When Ngozi advised her to press charges, Adanna broke down. "Here's my brother, Ngozi. Mama will never forgive me. And the women who trust you, will they forgive you if you cover it up?" The next morning, Adanna walked into the press conference with tear-filled eyes but a steady voice. "Integrity is expensive, but I will pay the price." She handed evidence of her brother's fraud to the EFCC herself. The decision split public opinion. But it proved one thing. Adanna's empire wasn't built on sentiment, but on strength. Later that night, she sat alone in her office. The same phone she once used to beg for access now rang nonstop, with global partners offering praise. Yet, she felt a quiet take. Success always demanded a sacrifice. Chike sent a message. "You did the right thing. Leadership is lonely, but noble." It was short, but for her, it meant everything. Closure. Months passed. The dust settled. Adanna's faced Grace Forbes Africa, BBC Africa Women, and Guardian Life. But she knew fame was fleeting. What mattered was purpose. She took a break from the spotlight and traveled to Nsukka, her hometown. There, she visited the small church where she once cried as a newlywed, begging God for peace. The villagers gathered around her, proud of their daughter who built cities. She donated funds to build Haven Vocational Academy, training women in design, carpentry, and business management. Standing before the first graduating class, she said, "Power isn't measured by how much money you control, but by how many lives you restore." Back in Abuja, she met Chike one last time at a charity gala. He looked healthier, humbler, now managing a modest real estate advisory firm. He approached her quietly. "You turned pain into purpose. Thank you for not destroying me when you could." She smiled warmly. "We both learned. Chike, you taught me how dangerous control is. I taught you how freeing humility can be." They clinked glasses. It wasn't reconciliation of lovers, but recognition of souls who had journeyed through darkness and come out wiser. As the event lights glowed and cameras flashed, the world saw a story of grace, grit, and rebirth, the woman who rose after being stripped of everything, and then built an empire that changed lives. The year was bright for Chike Okorie. Forbes had listed Haven Group among Africa's top 10 innovative real estate companies. She was invited to New York for the Global Women's Summit, where she shared a stage with presidents, CEOs, and philanthropists. When she spoke, the whole fell silent. "A few years ago, I couldn't access my own bank account. Today, I control an empire that houses thousands. I learned that when doors close, you can build your own house and make it bigger." The crowd erupted in a standing ovation. Her word went viral on TikTok and Twitter. #build your own house. 12 million views in 24 hours. But success, once again, invited jealousy. Her expansion into London and Dubai drew scrutiny. Nigerian officials accused Haven Group of foreign currency irregularities. A baseless claim, but enough to freeze her international accounts temporarily. Ngozi stormed into her office, furious. "They are trying to cripple you politically. You're too influential now." Adanna remained calm. "Then we'll show them what influence really means." She launched the Haven Women Housing Initiative, HWHI, a movement training 10,000 women to build homes using eco-block technology. The initiative became unstoppable. At the same time, she appointed Chike as one of her lead consultants for affordable housing. The press went wild. Ex-husband joins ex-wife's empire, from rivals to rebuilders. When reporters asked her why, she smiled. "Forgiveness doesn't weaken you. It disarms the enemy and multiplies your strength. It wasn't just business anymore. Adanna was redefining power and rewriting the legacy of every woman who'd ever been silenced. 3 months after the global expansion, disaster struck. One of Haven's subcontractors in Ghana collapsed a partially completed estate. 3 workers died. The media pounced. Haven Group, responsible for tragic building collapse, screamed headlines. Protesters gathered outside her Abuja office. Investors threatened to pull out. The government launched an inquiry. Adanna's name trended online, this time with hate. For the first time in years, she felt fear again, the same helplessness she'd once felt when Chike blocked her accounts. She sat in her office at midnight, staring at the city lights, questioning everything. Ngozi walked in, placing a hand on her shoulder. Don't let the world rewrite your story. But the real blow came when she discovered that Zeno, her former partner, now working secretly with competitors, had leaked falsified safety reports to frame her. Adanna didn't cry. She didn't panic. She gathered her evidence, real safety logs, sign inspection reports, and CCTV footage showing negligence from the subcontractor. At the public hearing, cameras flashed as she stood tall before the panel. I built this empire with integrity. Haven Group doesn't exploit people. We build for them. Those who betrayed this mission will face justice. When the truth came out, the nation watched in awe. Zeno's forged documents were exposed. He fled Ghana, disgraced. The narrative flipped overnight. Chike Okorie cleared, a model for transparent leadership. That night, she wept quietly, not from relief, but exhaustion. Even when you build for others, she whispered, someone will still try to tear it down. But her resolve only grew stronger. She knew now her purpose wasn't to stay unbroken. It was to keep rebuilding. Months later, a new government policy struck, one that threatened to demolish unauthorized estates across Abuja, including several of Haven's low-income housing sites. Adanna met with ministers, pleaded her case, and even appeared before the Senate Committee on Urban Planning. But corruption had deeper roots than she imagined. Behind the scenes, political rivals saw her influence as a threat. Rumors circulated that a woman billionaire was funding opposition candidates. It was false, but the smear worked. Her contract was suspended. Banks withdrew loans. Projects stalled. Staff panicked. Hundreds faced layoffs. But Adanna refused to surrender. She mortgaged her own assets to pay her workers. You all stood by me when the world doubted me. I won't abandon you now. Chike watched all this unfold. Despite everything, he still respected her. One night, he visited her office. Adanna, you can't fight everyone alone. Let me help. She hesitated, but something in his voice had changed. Humble, genuine. Together, they strategized. He leveraged his old government connections to mediate on her behalf, while she opened Haven's books to show total transparency. Within weeks, the government reversed its demolition order. The story changed again. Haven Group triumphs, a win for integrity and unity. For the first time in years, Adanna looked at Chike and smiled. Not as enemies, not as lovers, but as two people who had evolved through pain. 2 years later, Haven Group stood taller than ever, present in 12 countries, employing 20,000 people. But Adanna had grown weary of the constant noise of power. She wanted peace, not applause. She invited Chike and Ngozi to a private dinner at her home in Jai. I'm stepping down as CEO, she announced. They were stunned. Why? Ngozi asked. Adanna smiled softly. Because I built enough houses. Now I want to build hearts. She appointed a young woman from Haven Academy, a former orphan, as the new CEO, a bold move that shocked the corporate world. That same week, the United Nations invited her to serve as global ambassador for women and housing equity. The announcement trended for days. At the UN Gala in Geneva, Adanna took the stage one last time as a business leader. Her voice was steady, her presence magnetic. I was once silenced by control. Today, I speak not for revenge, but for renewal. Every woman deserves keys, not chains. The crowd rose in thunderous applause. Cameras flashed. Her journey had come full circle. Years later, In Abuja, a journalist visited the Haven Memorial Museum, built in honor of Adanna Okorie's contributions. Photographs lined the walls. Her first office in views, the gala in New York, the handshake with Chike, the Haven Towers opening. The journalist interviewed an elderly Chike, now in his 70s, quietly teaching real estate ethics at a local college. "Do you regret losing her?" the reporter asked. He smiled faintly. "I didn't lose her. The world gained her." At sunset, crowds gathered outside as a New Haven Foundation CEO unveiled a bronze statue of Adanna, standing tall, one hand holding a blueprint, the other a key. The inscription read, "She was locked out, so she built the door." From the crowd, young women whispered her name with reverence. Her story had become legend, told in classrooms, business conferences, and homes across Africa. Even Zeno, now living quietly abroad, sent a donation every year to the foundation, perhaps his silent apology. As the sun dipped over the Abuja skyline, the statue glowed in gold light, a reminder that power isn't inherited or given. It's reclaimed. Adanna Okorie, once silenced, once stripped, once underestimated, had become immortal. Her empire didn't just shake a man. It shook a nation, and it inspired generations to rise after every fall.